Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to talk about three little letters that are shaking up the entire business world: E, S, and G. And trust me, this isn't just some passing trend. We're talking about a whole new way to look at companies from the inside out. All right, let's jump right in.
For forever, really, the way we judged a company was super simple. How much cash is it raking in? But what if I told you that's just one piece of a much, much bigger puzzle? The question we're all starting to ask now goes way deeper. It's how do we actually know if a company is good? And right here, this is the core of that shift. We're moving away from the old playbook, which was all about financial profit, and into this new era, an era that's focused on what some people call the triple bottom line: people, planet, and profit. Honestly, this one idea, it's the key to understanding everything else we're going to get into. Okay, so how do we actually grade companies using this new scale? Well, that's where something called an ESG rating comes in. Just think of it like this: it's a score that goes way beyond just the financial numbers. It's really all about measuring how a company is handling its long-term risks and its opportunities across those three big areas: environmental, social, and governance. So yeah, in a nutshell, it's basically the new report card for any modern business. It's not just about whether the company is getting an A+ in math class, making money. It's also about whether it's a good citizen, how it treats others in the hallway, and what it does out on the playground.
All right, so let's break this down piece by piece. First up, we've got the E, and you probably guessed it, that stands for environmental. This is exactly what it sounds like. It's all about how a company's operations affect the planet we all share.
And look, we're not talking about some fluffy, feel-good green initiatives here. This is about hard data, real, trackable numbers. So for example, if an analyst is looking at a clothing company, they won't just ask, do you save water? No, they'll look at the exact amount of water it takes to make one pair of jeans, and then they'll stack that number up against all of its competitors. It's that specific. Okay, so next up is the S for social. And if E is all about the planet, S is all about people. Simple as that. This score looks at how a company deals with, everyone: its employees, its customers, its suppliers, and even the towns and cities where it sets up shop.
And this really hits close to home for all of us. Take labor standards, for example. The S score asks, is that big tech company making sure the people building its gadgets in factories overseas are being treated fairly? Or think about data privacy. Is that social media app you scroll through every day actually keeping your personal information safe? These are the exact kinds of tough questions this social score tries to answer.
And that brings us to our final letter, G, for governance. Now, this one might sound a little corporate, maybe a bit boring, but you could argue it's the most important one of all. Governance is all about the how. It's the internal rulebook. It's the checks and balances a company has in place to make sure it's running itself properly. Basically, it's how the company keeps itself in line.
So this part really gets at the internal health of a company, its integrity. Think about it like this: is the CEO's bonus tied to hitting long-term sustainability goals, or is it just about pumping up this quarter's profits, no matter the cost? See, a company with strong governance is just less likely to blow up in a huge scandal or some financial mess. And that is what builds real long-term trust and stability.
Okay, so a report card for big companies. It all sounds great, right? But I'm sure you're thinking the same thing I am. How do we know these scores are legit? I mean, who's actually checking their homework?
Well, the answer is a process called a Sustainability Audit. This is the fact checker. It's the deep dive. Basically, an independent third party comes in and does this massive assessment to make sure a company's actions match its words. They're there to verify that what a company claims it's doing is what it's really doing. And let me tell you, this is a serious process. First, auditors figure out what they're looking at. Then they dig in, collecting and analyzing just tons of data. They measure all that information against industry benchmarks, and then they write up a detailed report. But it doesn't stop there. The company is then expected to act on those findings, make changes, and keep track of its progress. It's this whole continuous cycle of getting better.
Okay, let's bring this down to earth with a company literally everyone knows: Amazon. So this score is from MSCI. They're one of the biggest players in ESG ratings. They grade companies from AAA, which is the best, all the way down to CCC. Amazon lands a BBB. That puts it right in the middle of the pack for its industry, pretty much average. So, what does that really mean?
And this is where you really see how nuanced these ESG ratings are.
So, on the one hand, Amazon gets good grades for things like its corporate governance and how it handles data privacy. But, and this is a big but, it gets marked down pretty badly for things like its labor management and what the raters call corporate behavior, which can cover stuff like antitrust issues. What this shows us is that an ESG score isn't just a simple good or bad stamp. It's a really detailed profile that highlights a company's biggest strengths and its biggest risks.
So, for the longest time, this whole ESG thing was pretty much voluntary. Companies would put out these reports to look good, to build their brand, but that is changing, and it's changing fast. What started out as a nice to have is now becoming a must have. It's becoming law all around the world.
And we're not just talking about one or two countries here. You've got the European Union with its massive CSRD directive. India is now requiring these reports. Here in the US, the SEC is putting out new rules on climate disclosure. Hong Kong, Australia, the list just keeps growing. The rulebook for global business is literally being rewritten right before our eyes.
So, okay, that's a lot of corporate talk, but why should you care about any of this? Because this new report card, it changes everything. It changes the game for how companies compete, who they hire, and, maybe most importantly, where we as individuals decide to put our money and even our careers.
And the data is pretty clear on this. Companies that do well on ESG have a real advantage. For one, they're magnets for investors who want their money to do more than just make money. They want it to align with their values. They're also way better at attracting and holding on to the best employees, especially younger folks who really care about this stuff. And when you put all that together, you get a serious, long-term competitive edge.
So you can see we're really at a major turning point. For the past 100 years, the number one question we'd ask about a company was super simple. Is it profitable?
Well, that question is being replaced by a new one, a much bigger, more important question for the future. Is this company sustainable? Because at the end of the day, true sustainability across the environment, society, and governance, that's the real test of whether a company is built to last.
And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. All of this information is becoming more and more public. So as an investor, an employee, a customer, the real question is, how are you going to use this information? How will you use this new report card? Because the power really is shifting, and now the choice is yours.